I started 17 books in December and I finished 11 of them. Let's talk about them. First DNF was Black Leopard Red Wolf by Marlon James. This is a book that I picked up in an Oxfam charity shop that I volunteered at the beginning of this year because it looked cool. I'd heard good things. It popped up on a couple of lists. I can't tell you what this book was about because I got about 15 minutes into the audiobook before deciding that the protagonist made me want to hit him every time he spoke or did anything. This book was not for me. It might be for you. It wasn't for me. Then I DNF'd The Girl King by Mimi Yu. I have read The Girl King before, but I didn't realise it was a duology, and a while back I picked up the second book in the series in a charity shop, but it's been about 6 or 7 years since I read the first one, so I decided to reread it. I am now past the age at which I enjoy this book, so I DNF'd it and I gave up because there was no way I was going to read the second book as well. I just did not enjoy it at all. Then I DNF'd The First Binding by R.R. Verdi. This was an ebook. I DNF'd this within the first sort of 10-15 pages. The protagonist and the author were just so full of themselves. They were clearly trying to pull off some sort of my character is better than everyone else and look at me tricking the audience and tricking these poor puny villagers that he's walked in on. Like, it was just so arrogant and so like pig-headed. I didn't want to listen to it. I didn't want to read it anymore. So I DNF'd it. I also DNF'd Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. I got about halfway through this book before I DNF'd it. This is Cassandra Clare's first attempt at writing adult in a brand new series that has nothing to do with the Shadowhunters. The concept of this book sounded interesting. What it actually was, I was going to read this to write like a review of this for the Fantasy Hive, who I now write reviews for, but it was crap. It felt like she had read every other YA author's best works from the last 5 years. I'm talking V. Schwab, Leigh Bardugo, Holly Black, all of sort of that gang of authors, read everything they'd ever written and boiled it down into the bits that she liked best and just put those in her book. None of it felt original. Everything felt like I'd read it before. Her main character shared the name of the main character from V. Schwab's book, Darker Shade of Magic, which she does acknowledge, and she makes a joke about it. So this was clearly done with both parties aware of it. But it was really off-putting, it was really jarring, and I just felt I could see where it was going. It also really suffered from a case of a YA author suddenly writing adult books, like books for adults, setting every other scene in a brothel and trying to be as like sexy and scandalous as possible and talking about the female character's breasts all the time. I don't want to hear that. If you have to rely on that to make your book adult, please don't and stick to writing YA. Like, the people do that in YA anyway. It was a massive turn off. It was really disappointing, and I'm not going to bother. I'm going to carry on reading Shadowhunters because I know what to expect from Shadowhunters. I'm already in that world, but this new trilogy is not for me. Swordcatcher was a duff. No, thank you. Then I started the Book of the Most Precious Substance by Sarah Gran. I've heard lots and lots of good things about this book, but this is not for me. It's a contemporary story about people who are on the hunt for this very rare sex book, essentially, and it's supposed to be a very intricate view of human relationships and things like that, but it starts off incredibly sad, and I just was not in the headspace to be able to be sucked into a story that horrendously depressing. So I DNF'd it. And then I DNF'd The Wind Singers by Megan Lindholm, also known as Robin Hobb. This is the second book in the Wind Singers series. This is me DNFing the series. The first book was fine. I really enjoyed it. The second book seems like it was going in a completely different direction. And it felt more sci-fi than fantasy, which really fucking threw me. There were like alien creatures living in this world, and I wasn't into it. I didn't care about any of the characters. I couldn't really remember any of the characters from before or why I liked them, and I just lost all interest. It wasn't enough to keep me reading the series. I had one 3-star book this time. I had The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. This had been on my TBR for a while. This is about Geeta, who is rumoured to have killed her husband because he disappeared and has not come back. So everyone thinks that she killed him, and she's done nothing to dispel those rumours. So when another woman comes to her for help trying to kill her husband, she gets pulled into this sort of scheme that goes wildly out of control, and it's all about the lives of these women in rural India and how they manage and how they live their lives and what's important to them and how things are run. And at its core, it's a story about power. And while it was really good, it was really slow in the middle, and the ending didn't happen quite how I wanted it to. So there's only a 3-star for me, but I still would recommend it. Then I've got the 4 stars. Most of these books are 4 stars. I've got The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. This is the second book in the Thursday Murder Club series. This follows a new murder and a new mystery, which draws on Elizabeth's backstory, as well as some local characters in the town. I love these books. I love these characters, I love these books. They did exactly what they did in the first book, but I was just slightly more confused this time. I thought I could guess where the twists and the turns were going, but I couldn't. There was a good twist at the end, or 2, depending on how confused you got. So it was only a 4 rather than a 5, but I do highly, highly recommend this series. It is as good as everyone says it is. It is cozy, comforting, amusing murder mysteries while also being incredibly serious and ripping your heart out every now and again. If that sounds up your alley, then you're on the right page. Really, this is the sort of thing I enjoy. Then we have A Song of Ruin and Rage by Mackenzie Marshall. Mackenzie sent me an arc of this. She is lovely, and this was a really interesting read. This is based in Welsh mythology. This is a story based in Welsh. Why can't I say Welsh mythology? Welsh mythology. This is a book centred around Welsh mythology with a really interesting cast of characters and sort of political intrigue and drawing on different aspects of Welsh mythology that all sort of bring it together into this big climax at the end. I did a proper review of it on my Instagram, so head over there if you want to read that. Also, if you want more information about the mythology, Mackenzie does some really good breakdowns on her TikTok, which is where I found her. She's really cool. Then I read The Queen's Assassin by James Barclay. I was really pleased that I enjoyed this book so much. You can tell that this was written post-COVID. I never would have expected a heavily medieval fantasy book to have such big conversations about big pharma and corruption and business in that sort of way, but it had those conversations and it had them well. We follow an army medic who is called back to the city to be the Queen's personal physician. She's very reluctant to this because she has a secret that no one can know, and internal political turmoil eventually draws secrets out one by one, and she is on the hunt to solve a mystery occurring within the city. It is really well written. I believe James Barclay is a veteran of the fantasy scene. I can't remember if I've read anything else by him, but I did really enjoy this one. Then I read The Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. John Scalzi wins again by getting me to read sci-fi and enjoying it. This is exactly what it says on the tin. This is about a man who starts working with the Kaiju Preservation Society. Shit goes wrong, they have to fix it. It's a romp. It's an entertaining, funny, fast-paced romp that took me an evening to read. I would highly recommend this if you like fantasy or sci-fi, because it does take place... No, it takes place in a different dimension, but it feels more fantasy than sci-fi sometimes, because although there's a lot of talk about tech and medical equipment, we are mainly focused on these kaijus and looking after these kaijus and working out how they work. It was brilliant and I enjoyed it a lot, and sarcastic scientists will always be a trope that I enjoy. Then I read Across the Greengrass Fields by Seanan Maguire. This is another one of the Wayward Children books. This one is for the horse girls, and I don't need to say anything else about that book. If you haven't heard me talk about the Wayward Children series before, it's about a school of children who have all been through doors into other worlds, come back into the human world, and are now waiting for their doors to appear again so they can go back to these other worlds. And each novella either follows someone in the school or just the story of how they found their door, and it's a different person every time. This one is Horses and Unicorns. Then I read The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. If you want to hear about what I thought about this, I did a full in-depth review for the Fantasy Hive. I'm going to put a link to the review down below. Do check them out. I am now part of their review team, so I will be popping up every now and again with more reviews, and I'm really excited that I get to do some long form writing of reviews because I haven't done that in a while. This was a 4-star. I enjoyed it. Then I read Where the Drowned Girls Go. This is another Shauna Maguire Wayward Children series. This one is about mermaids, but also boarding schools. And I won't say any more than that because otherwise I'll spoil it, but it was really good. I still really enjoy the series. I'm going to keep reading it as it comes out. And my last 4-star for this month was Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. So I started the Dark Artifices trilogy in my attempt to read everything that in the Shadowhunter universe. This is really good. I enjoyed it. The reason it's not a 5-star was because the romance makes me want to hurl myself off a cliff, but it's not the main part of the book, so it's okay. It's not gonna hurt me. I just sort of skim the really sappy, gross parts because I can see where it's fucking going. I don't need to read 600 pages of sappy romance. But the murder mystery aspect of this book was very good, and the fact that I knew all the characters and they made references to other books that I'd read, and I actually understood them this time because I am now reading them all in order. I liked this. I will be reading the rest of the series. I had 2 5-stars for this month. One of them surprised me, one of them didn't. The one that surprised me was A Little Lie by Max Turner. This is a cute fantasy Christmas smutty novella that I picked up at BristolCon this year. I met Max Turner as well. He was absolutely lovely. I have one other of his books waiting on my TBR shelf that I might now pick up. But it was very good. I enjoyed it a lot. And it's male romance, if you want to know. But I read this in an evening. It was very sweet. It was very realistic, minus the fantasy elements, of which there aren't many, but there are some. It's like urban fantasy. But I wanted to read it in December because it's the only book I own that has like a Christmas theme. So there we go. I read it. 5 stars. Very good. And the other 5-star was Bloody Bones by Laurel K. Hamilton. This is number 5 in the Anita Blake Vampire Hunters series. So I won't say much about it because I don't want to spoil it for anyone. Though this was published in 1996. So these books just keep getting sort of darker and darker and more intense. And it's a 30-book series, so I'm waiting for it to get a bit ridiculous or a bit shit or a bit boring. But so far at book 5, we're doing fine. I'm hopeful. We'll see where this goes. It was 5 stars. I really enjoy these books. They're like palate cleansers for me. But that was it. That was all the books that I read in December, rounding off my 2023. If you want to hear me talk about all my statistics for 2023 and my reading and my goals for this year, there is a video up about that now, and there will also be another video coming out next week about my series and where I'm at with that and what I want to get read this year, and things like that. Cool, that was another video. See you next Sunday.